Today, I'll be talking about chromatography and their principles and different types of chromatography as well as the applications of chromatography. So what exactly this chromatography means? So the word chromatography is actually derived from the Greek word chromo actually means color and graphene means to write. So it's this chromatography. It's a technique which is used for the separations of complex mixtures of compounds and that mixtures and the mixtures is dissolved in a fluid which you call it as a mobile phase, which actually carries the mixture through structures holding another material. You call it as a stationary phase. So which means there are two components. One is mobile phase and the stationary phase, and the various constituents of the mixtures travels at different speeds, causing them to separate. Okay, on what basis the separation of the mixtures they're happening? So the separation is based on the differential partitioning between the mobile as well as the stationary phase. So as I said, chromatography, which literally means color writing, which was first employed by Russian scientist Michael Tasvet in 1900. He was working like primarily for the separations of the pigments such as chlorophyll, keratin, as well as the xanthophylls. Uh, so the principles of chromatography it actually consist of mobile phase as well as the stationary phase. Then what exactly this mobile phase? It is actually a mixtures of substance to be separated, dissolved in a liquid or a gas. And the stationary phase, which is a porous solid matrix through where the samples contained in the mobile phase percolates, and the interactions happen between the mobile phase and the stationary phase, and result as a result there will be a separation of the complex mixtures of compounds. Now, the applications of chromatography for what purposes these chromatography techniques is being used. Okay, so this chromatography techniques, which is commonly used for the separations of amino acid, protein, as well as carbohydrates. And apart from this, it is also being used for analyzing the drugs, hormones, as well as vitamins. And it's helpful for the qualitative and the quantitative analysis of mixtures of complex mixtures, and it is also useful for the determinations of molecular weight of the proteins. Now if you'll see the what are the different types of chromatography, then there are different types of chromatography like paper chromatography, thin layer chromatography, gel chromatography, column chromatography, ion exchange chromatography, gel filtration chromatography, gas liquid chromatography, as well as the affinity chromatography. So all these different types of chromatography techniques, they have a different principle for the separation, where the mobile phase or the stationary phase is different among these different types of chromatography techniques. Let's say to one of the chromatography technique, which is paper chromatography. It's one of the most common chromatography technique that we do when we study graduation. So a paper chromatography is a technique that involves placing of small dot or line of sample solution into the strip of chromatography paper. So it requires of a paper strip where you are going to put your sample into that chromatography paper, and then that will actually act as a stationary phase. Okay, so that the paper is placed in a jar containing a shallow layer of solvent and sealed, and as the solvent rises through the paper, it meets the sample mixtures, which starts to trouble up the paper with the solvent. Means it says that the chromatography paper will actually act as a stationary phase, whereas the solvent will act as a mobile phase, and that solvent will actually take your sample, which will actually migrate upwards the chromatography paper.